I've had the honour of interviewing my friend and the amazing author James Carter recently. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we couldn't do a face-to-face interview, but here's what we talked about anyway. Hope you guys enjoy it. Hi James, welcome. Could you please introduce yourself to everybody?
Hi everyone, my name is James Carter. I'm the author of Instinct, which you can see just there as its cover, and this is my interview with you, Kellen. The interview is brought to you by this book here, There Is Always Light, by Harper Moon. A lovely little poetry book, which you can find on Amazon now.
Now, I've read Instinct and I couldn't put it down because it was so amazing. But what made you want to write a book and who inspired you to write?
So it all came from basically working in different places. So I've worked in Orlando in Disney, which I did while I was training to be a teacher. And whilst there, I kind of fell in love with magic and making magic for everyone. And then when I came back, I worked at the Warner Brothers Studio Tour London, the making of Harry Potter. And again, just carried on with this kind of feeling. And throughout all of that, I had this story in my mind as to Instinct, essentially. And I just continuously wrote this book, which I hoped would inspire people to escape to this kind of faraway land and escape whatever they've got going on in their world at that kind of moment. I also wanted to bring about kind of change with regards to animal welfare and things like that, and I think it's key to actually hear about all these different kind of animals and have your own kind of feelings towards them. So if your instinct is that of like a polar bear, for example, hopefully you'll then care more about polar bears and their welfare, and then care a little bit more about kind of global warming and the kind of connotations of what's happening there. So all those kind of things feed into it, but mainly it is a want just to kind of create this fantasy world where people can escape and kind of explore and have a moment away from the madness that is this world at this moment in time.
How long would you say it took you to write Instinct? Because I know most books take years and years to write. Was that the case with you?
How long did it take me to write Instinct? It took about 7 years. It was a long process. Obviously, it's hard to find time when you're working and things like that, and it's a long old process. So I wrote the first draft in about, I think it was during my last year of university. I decided rather than write a dissertation, I would write a book instead, which obviously my teacher was a big fan of. So I wrote that in about 3 weeks. I wrote the first draft, and then it was a case of just editing and editing and editing, and having people look at it, and then editing some more, and then just continuously going back and forth, and just making sure it was right to go to print, basically. So the whole process took about 7 years. It could have been a bit quicker, but I just wanted to take my time with it and make sure that it was the right thing that I wanted to put out there, basically.
Without giving too much away, could you tell us about Instinct?
Okay, so a little bit about Instinct. I am terrible at kind of explaining what it is, just because I tend to just ramble on and on and on. So here is a copy of the book, and I'm just going to read the blurb. So after a tornado rips through the southeast of England, Liam must journey to another world in search of his brother, who is amongst those who have disappeared. The search takes him to Libra, a world that was created by 4 people with the ability to control the elements as a place for people to find true freedom. But even freedom comes at a price. For in this world, the animal instinct that lives within you will develop the longer that you are there, and so it's a race against time for Leo and his friends to rescue his brother and return home before it's too late, before they become part of the instinctive. So that's the kind of blurb. It's a young adult fantasy adventure. It has drawn kind of inspiration from things like Lord of the Rings. Obviously, you've got Middle Earth and things like that, and I've created my own world called Libra, which you can find a map of on the inside of the book, actually. There it is. And yeah, basically whatever animal instinct lives within you will develop the longer that you spend time there. So if you have, for instance, the instinct of a lion, gradually throughout time, the longer that you're there, you'll develop the characteristics of a lion. And that doesn't just mean the features that you generally think of when you think of these kind of things, like courage and all that kind of stuff. but you'll physically develop into a lion. And that can take different forms for different people. So it could be just a mane, or it could be further characteristics like eyesight, like physical attributes, and the way your body kind of functions. How you stand on 2 feet could become 4 feet. You could develop wings, obviously not for a lion, but for other animals and things like that. And I wanted to kind of attack the kind of general thoughts. So one of the lead characters has the instinct of an owl, which obviously you think of as wise and things like that, but I wanted to kind of go against the grain and show that that's not generally the typical type of thing. So hopefully as you read the book, you'll learn a lot more about different animals. So it's a good thing for kids to read as well, just because they'll learn about animals, not just to like take care of them, but literally just to learn. So one of the lines in there is about how gradually your bones will become hollow if you have the kind of instinct of a bird type, because obviously their bones are hollow, just to make it easier to fly. And you'll just learn lots and lots and lots of different things, because this world is full of people, or the instinctive, which all have different instincts of lots and lots of different animals and creatures. So it's an educational trip, but it's also a fantastical trip, and I think it's like a good time, and I'm pretty proud of it, to be fair. Can I think of anything else to tell you about Instinct without any spoilers? I think it deals with, I hope it deals with a lot of things that you find in the modern day. So one of the lead characters is gay. One of them kind of deals with a lot with depression and things like that. And gradually, as we go through the series, we'll talk a lot more about global warming and things. So there's a lot of things to just kind of learn, and it deals with all these different things in a kind of a different take, if you will. And so I think, again, it's quite educational and quite important to learn these different things.
What was the inspiration behind Instinct? Was it something that just like came to you one day, or was it something you've been thinking about for a long time?
So the inspiration for Instinct, so the way I first came up with the book was when I was out late at night walking just in a field, and it was about 1 a.m. and I was just walking through the local field. And you ever get those feelings when you just feel like you're being watched, and you're in the dead of night, it's pitch black, and you're just looking around, and you just feel like something's eyes are watching you. And that was that kind of inescapable feeling, and from that moment on, the ideas just started rolling. It just all started coming to the fore. I wanted to kind of deal with that feeling, but also deal with, like I say, things like global warming, animals, and all these different kind of things. So whatever you have a huge passion or interest in, I think that's a really important thing to actually deal with when you're writing. So you want to write about things that you're passionate about, and animals are one of those things. So you can see a tattoo here of a tiger, just because tigers are my favourite animal. But yeah, so that's where the inspiration came from, just animals. And obviously I said about Lord of the Rings. I'm a huge fan of, obviously, Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, and things like that. Anything where you are provided this other world, which is just different to anything that you experience in your day-to-day life, and something that only books and now films and TV can help you with, and just escaping. Just escapism is like a huge inspiration, I guess.
Every author has characters that they identify with more than others. Who were your characters that you identified more with?
So, what character do I identify with the most? Right, so the book series is going to be loosely based off of the relationship me and my brother have. So I identify the most with, obviously, Leo, because Sam is the brother, and that relates a lot to my brother. We also, our father hasn't been present in most of our life. He also picked up the book and started reading it, then realised that the dad wasn't present, and then took offence to that because the dad wasn't present, which I thought was quite ironic. But alas, there we go. Shout out to my father, in case he watches this. Anyway, so yeah, we relate a lot to that. There is obviously with one of the characters who's dealing with her own kind of like mental side of things, like depression. I've had a lot of experience personally with those kind of things, and also I know a lot of people who also deal with depression, and it's one of those things how I relate to that, and it's also inspired me to write it because it's another way of just kind of putting onto paper the things that you're feeling inside your head. Like, it can be obviously quite hard to talk about in day-to-day life. I'm getting more open about it, but when you're writing it down in kind of the words of someone else, but they are still the words of yourself, yeah, it's that. So I identify a lot with that. So it's a nice way of communicating the way that you're feeling inside and the things that are going on in your life and the things that you've dealt with a lot over the past. And
now, my favourite character from Libra is probably the character who's not going to be everybody's first choice, but I honestly love them to pieces. For you, who was the character that was easiest to write about, and who's the character who's hardest to write about?
so I guess the characters that I've found easiest to write would be Leo and Kyra, just because I identify with them the most. I mean, obviously all the characters have kind of formed in my head, and they might be loosely based off people I know, or they might just be kind of forms of things I'm thinking or whatever. So I wouldn't say it's been easy to write because it's been a slog at times, but they are all different kind of forms of things that I say from time to time. Yeah, I think they're all right. To be fair, the same goes with anything about the hardest. Sometimes it's quite fun to write as the villainous character. I think it's quite interesting that a lot of the time what the villains are saying, obviously they believe in. They're not doing it to be a villain. They're doing it because they believe what they're doing is right. Which means that sometimes it can be hard to disagree with what your villain's saying. So it's hard. The hardest part when it comes to that is keeping them as the villain of the piece, if that makes sense. Because sometimes if you do agree with what they're saying, it can be hard to be like, how do I actually make you a villain when I'm agreeing with what you're saying? If you care and know your characters enough, then hopefully it'll be easy enough to write from their point of view.
Was it hard to come up with the land of Libero?
Libera itself is split into 4 main segments, and then 1 capital, which is Regnum. And what I wanted to kind of come across is as you go around Libero, you will notice that you're kind of traveling around the seasons. So you'll go from winter to spring to summer to autumn and then back round. So you'll experience all these different kind of seasons and how they affect like whatever the climate is in that area as you go around and explore all these different regions. Obviously they're named under different things. Check out the book if you want to find out what they are. But you'll notice as you go around the actual plant life that you experience in all these different places is different, and it will gradually change to become like a more ice type area. So you'll experience the trees gradually change, and the amount of grass that's there will change its type, and it will also change like how much it is and what you'll gradually get towards Saxon, for example, which is ice and rock, and you'll go there from kind of a spring-like temperature, and it'll get colder and colder and colder, and the trees will go from like oaks and things that we have over here in England, and it'll gradually get to types of trees that you might find in like Russia and rougher kind of climates and things like that. So it's again a kind of educational thing, not just sending us an educational book, but I think it's nice to actually learn things from what you're reading. In Regnum, for example, the capital, this is a culmination of all the different types, or all the different areas of Libero. So it's the place where everyone comes together and just, it's like the capital of Libero, but it's not like any capital that you've ever experienced before in your life. Like, you might go to London, or you might go to now I'm trying to think of capital cities. I don't want to say anything just in case I get them wrong, but like, you might go to Paris or something like that, where obviously you've got lots of buildings and just tons and tons of people. But Regnum's not like that. That is a completely different kind of experience, which I hope you'll find for yourself. And you'll also potentially find out what the cover of the book is inspired by. But yeah, so Libero, just again, a fantastical world where, like, what inspired it actually is, you ever just look out the window and you just look at birds. Like, you might have been stuck in the classroom, or you might be stuck at work, and you just look outside and you just see all these animals like running around or flying around, and you just think, freedom. That is what freedom is like. And you just pine for this kind of freedom. And that is what I spent years doing. I was working in a call centre a lot of the time, and you just find yourself wanting something more. And that is what I hope Libero gives people. It gives you that kind of freedom feeling, and you can escape for a little bit and just find freedom.
Without giving too much away, the last 2 chapters of the book were absolutely gripping. Did you find them at all challenging to write?
It wasn't necessarily hard to write the first 2 chapters. So when I did the first draft was completely different to what you'll find in the book now. Hopefully one day I'll release like the first draft and people can read it and just tear it to pieces, because I'm not going to lie to you, I sent it to the editor, and the editor was a guy called Michael Rowley, who edited The Martian, which was made into a Matt Damon film, and bless him, he was very kind about it. He compared Instinct to things like The Wizard of Oz, Peter Pan and things like that, and I'm not going to lie to you, it was terrible. Well, it wasn't terrible. The ideas were good, but it was written badly, and I feel bad for him, like, having sent it to him, and he's had to find like good things to say about it. But he did, and he told me the things that I need to obviously do to improve the book, and a lot of that like took place in the last 2 chapters, and I had to focus a lot more on like the point of view of who's speaking and when, and how you can, like, there is obviously something that goes on at the very back end of the book, and how the first lot of the book had been written was completely different to how the last bit of the book had been written, and so it just didn't make sense. So it took a lot of effort to actually reword and refocus the point of view of how you're seeing or how you're experiencing the end of the book. So that's one of the things. It's been a massive learning curve actually getting this book out there, and learning how to properly write a book, and hopefully it's come good. Like, once it was out there, I unfortunately had left in a few mistakes, which everyone was very kind to let me know. I'd missed out a word on the first page, which sucked, and I'm not going to lie to you, made me cry once someone pointed it out to me. But that's all been amended. If you order the book now, hopefully you won't find any mistakes in there, and there is all the words that you'll find on the first page are meant to be there and are there, which is nice. So yeah, and the last 2 chapters, easy enough to write, a pain in the butt to edit, I guess.
Now, as a fellow author, I remember feeling overcome with joy and relief when I finished writing my first book, but I also was filled with dread and fear. How did you feel after finishing writing Instinct?
It felt good. It was obviously a long process, and I had a lot of thoughts that I wanted to get onto the page, and it took a long time to actually get them onto the page. First thing I did when I finished my first draft was get a tattoo, which you can see a lion with a wing there, which represents freedom, and then underneath that on my chest is the word Libero, so it's close to my heart. Unfortunately, I've put on a lot of weight over the past 2 years, so I won't show you the word Libero because it's just not a pretty sight, and it's not something you want to see on a nice little casual video. But yeah, no, the the finishing writing was a good feeling, and it obviously from the first draft to the finishing of it took about 6.5 years. So it's been one of those processes, and it still doesn't actually feel real. Like, even if I've got a copy of the book in my hand. My friends were kind enough to pitch together and actually buy the poster, which you can see in the background there as well, which is very sweet of them. But it's still Jamie Doesn't Feel Real, and it's been nice to just like have people buy the book and tell me what they like about like the thing that I've had in my head for so long. And it's obviously a very nerve-wracking thing, releasing this baby that I've spoken about to people for so many years. People have obviously not believed that it's been a worthwhile thing. They're like, when you're going to get like a real job, for example, or is it actually going to do anything? Are you actually ever going to write it or release it or anything like that? And there have been moments where it feels like it's not going to happen. There's been moments where it feels like it's absolutely pointless, and obviously it's happened, it's out there, and people are reading it, and that's obviously just a very nice feeling. It was a good feeling when the first box of books came into the house and I got to open them up. Obviously, having self-published, I've had to design the cover, which I worked with someone called Tram Doodles on. So if you look up Tram Doodles on Instagram, shout out Tram Doodles. Very talented artist, and like I had to work with her to get the right cover, and then after she'd actually done the painting of actually speaking of the painting, I wanted a really classic kind of vibe on the cover. So I didn't want like just one of these kind of CGI covers that you see these days. I wanted a really classic kind of vibe like you have with the original Harry Potters and things like that. I wanted a watercolour where it's going to stand the kind of test of time, and I think like Tram, she's done a fabulous job. So you've got all the different parts of Libero in here. You've got you've got Regnum in here. And you can see the 4 lead characters just standing there on the precipice, just as they go towards the capital. And it is something I'm very proud of. I had to then take that and then make the cover, make the back cover as well. We've also got the imprints, which you'll see here. So all the imprints, depending on which part of Liberia you're from, you'll have an imprint that relates to yourself. And again, that's another piece of the puzzle that has to be put together to actually have the book come out, which has been a long process. But yeah, having put it all together, made the cover online, and then put it into the hands of other people to then print the book off and then hope that it comes through, because obviously it unfortunately costs a fortune to actually have something self-published, and then you've got to await it coming in and looking good. And thankfully everyone's first initial response once they see the book is, this is a proper book, not bad. And the cover's been really well received, so that's been a really nice thing, actually.
I think what everybody would like to know now is, have you caught the writing bug, and can we be expecting more books from James Carter?
I do plan on writing more books. So after I finish this trilogy, which hopefully will take less time than just writing the first one, after I finish the trilogy, I've got a prequel in mind about how Libero came to be, which is an interesting kind of premise. And then I have a really nice children's story, which I think I'm going to make into essentially an elongated poem, similar to Matt Haig's The Truth Pixie, where it's just kind of a long form of rhyming poetry throughout the book. And I think that's quite nice, not going to lie. And then hopefully I can continue writing, and whatever job I'm doing at that given time will allow me to do so.
What does the future hold for James Carter?
So the future for James Carter is hopefully in the book world, or anything kind of creative. I love creativity. Unfortunately, in high school I made the wrong choices and went for the easy choices where my friends were, rather than actually something that I wanted to do, mainly because I had no idea what I wanted to do at the time. And it took till I was maybe 23, 24 when I realised who I was and what I wanted to be. And obviously once it comes late, it's quite hard to actually get into that kind of avenue. So I've made some short films, and I've obviously written a book, so hopefully it's something along that kind of line. Obviously, I need to keep promoting this book and the trilogy thereafter. So hopefully you'll see some things around. If you look on the cars, hopefully you'll see some car stickers as well. This is on the back of my car and my family's car. If you want some car stickers, holler at me and I'll send you one. And yeah, basically just anything creative or anything where I'm helping people out. Like anything I can do to make people happy, I'm going to try and do. And hopefully that's in the way of giving people this kind of form of escape and helping people feel seen. Yeah, something along those lines, fingers crossed.
Thank you so much for your time, James. Best of luck with Instincts. Are there any last words of wisdom you'd like to say to our viewers?
Thanks very much for watching, everyone. I hope I haven't rambled too much. I suck at talking about myself. I'm usually one that asks the questions. So apologies for my awkwardness, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you have, please feel free to go and check out Instinct, available in all good bookstores, online. Head up www.findlibera.com for a signed copy. Social media channels, James Carter Author, Instagram, Find Libero on Twitter, and also Facebook. But Find Libero is all about basically finding your freedom. So Libero is the Latin translation for freedom. If you do read the book, then thank you very much. I really hope you like it. Please leave a review. If you don't want to read the book, that's absolutely fine as well. I only just hope that you yourself find whatever freedom you're looking for. So essentially, I hope you find your Libero. Thanks very much, and thank you, Kellen, for this lovely little interview. I appreciate it.